how am I
Yeah.
abusive because I didn't pay attention to every word you said? How am
Hmm.
I abusive because I told you that you need to clean the dishes better, or because, I don't ask about your day? Now not asking about your day is abuse.
Condition is you, and it's triangulating with an ex that maybe she did do those things, maybe she didn't, but essentially it's conditioning you to be like, well, I would never do that.
Than before.
So, one of the things that I find really interesting about narcissistic abuse is that people often separate narcissists into these various categories. Now, according to the DSM 5, there's one type, but experts know that there's these little subcategories that make them really more interesting. Each one has their own qualities, and certainly they can be across some of the different types. You specialize in covert narcissists. So I would love to talk to you about that. So why don't you introduce yourself and then let's get into it and talk about the covert narcissist.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. So I do focus on covert narcissists and covert abuse. My name is Eleni, and my TikTok is no narc sense. I'm the same thing on Instagram. I thought the I thought the name was pretty clever. No
Oh yeah.
nonsense, no narc sense. And we on my page we focus on those covert narcissistic tactics, so you can help, I guess, put a label to what you experienced and let you know that you're not crazy.
Yeah. I think one of the things that really kind of characterizes narcissistic abuse is feeling crazy. And on my page, we talk about abuse tactics and, you could put all these labels on the tactics. But at the end of the day, I think that a lot of people are missing that it's abuse at all
Yeah.
because the tactics can be so wildly covert. And I will make videos sometimes on a covert abuse tactic or do a skit, and people will watch it. And some people are like, whoa, I relate to that. You'll always get the handful of people that are like, wow, suddenly that's abuse. And it's
Hmm.
not that that in an isolated incident might be abuse, but tell me what some of the most covert tactics that you've seen or that you've experienced, what ones do you see that kind of confuse people the most?
Yeah, I think the something that's the hardest to pinpoint is what they don't do. So those are the, I think that if you talk about like the most covert, it's like they're not even doing anything. It's the neglect. It's emotional neglect, I think, is one of the most covertly abusive tactics. It's that stonewalling, it's the silent treatment, where they essentially remove themselves from your energy, from your life, as a way to give you a message like what you did wasn't good. I don't appreciate what you did. And it's not like, okay, yeah, if someone is like, okay, I yelled at you, etc. But this is more like, I don't like the way you folded that towel. So what I'm going to do is give you a silent treatment so you could correct yourself in the future. It's a way of training somebody. And that really just creates a lot of anxiety in you. If you don't know what you did, you think you did something wrong, and then you're going back to them being like, what did I do? How can I fix this? And they're just like, no, everything's fine. I don't know what you're talking about. But
They just
yeah,
gaslight you like, no, I'm not in a
yeah,
bad mood. I'm fine. But
yeah,
clearly you are. And
yeah,
using an example, which may sound ridiculous, but how you fold a towel, you can be punished for folding
absolutely.
them wrong. And I don't even think that they care about the towel or how it's folded. It's actually just undermining you and what you think is right and making you feel like you are wrong, like you are bad, like you're not enough.
Yes, and that was my personal experience. It was the folding the towels incorrectly. It was um, like scrutinizing the way I clean dishes, like actually taking photos of the little specks on the pots and like zooming in on them to show me what a bad job I did. It's,
Oh, God.
I know, yeah, but it sounds insane. But when you're in it, you're like, okay, maybe I am doing this wrong. Maybe I can do this right. Maybe there, I get it. He wants the place clean, so I could be better.
Hmm. Do you think it kind of put you almost in like a fawn response? You were
Oh,
always sort of
absolutely.
trying to meet his unattainable goals?
Yes, absolutely. And I speak about this really often with friends and my therapist. That's my default response, unfortunately. I say unfortunately because I almost wish I had that aggressive, like, response. And sometimes I'm like, that could have been maybe escalated the abuse further and made it worse. But at the same time, my personal like self-esteem, I'm like, man, I just turned over and was like, how can I help you? How can I make this better?
Yeah, I definitely found that for the most part, I also had a fawn response mostly. However, I joke that like my Italian blood, definitely I had the fight response. However, the fight response got me into some physical abuse. So it's not that we get to choose, of course, how we respond, but I think people always wish that they could have some kind of different response. I think at the end of the day, I wish we all had the response of leaving, but
Yeah.
we're conditioned not to. We get put into a trauma bond unknowingly. And I know trauma bonding is kind of my thing. That's what I talk about a lot on my page. Not everybody who's in an abusive relationship is obviously in a trauma bond, but I do see it to be quite common where a lot of these really covert tactics make you feel stuck because there's that intermittent, they're horrible to you, but they're always kind. And I kind of want to talk about the kindness because, your book title, right? But they're so nice. That's such an amazing title because I think that really just nails it. And I tell my kids sometimes too that predators or bad people, we all think that they're going to present like in some kind of way that will make it obvious that they're bad. But actually, abusers are very kind until they aren't. Tell me about the beginning of these kinds of relationships. What makes them so nice at the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of how you feel, I feel like they just present themselves as Prince Charming or Princess Charming. They study you in some cases. I know some that will have found their partner on social media, and if you're someone that, posts a lot about yourself, they do study you a little bit, and then they kind of put on that mask. And so they come into your life being that person that you thought, oh, like the sky opened up and they fell right into my lap. And finally, this is who I'm supposed to be with. Like, finally, this is the person. And they'll present, like, maybe, for example, you have a hobby, they have that same hobby, or they have the similar political views, similar religious views, etc. Just checking all the boxes, right? Like that's what they do. They make sure that they're checking all the boxes. Um, and you're like, great, perfect. This person is great. And then they come in and they'll do things for you, like maybe your love language, although I know those have slightly been debunked. But
Still, I
say
know
for
people
example,
reference that.
yeah, exactly. But you enjoy acts of service. They'll come over and be like, let me do your dishes for you. I know you're so stressed. And then you're thinking, oh my God, you're hearing on the internet, if he wanted to, he would. He's doing all the things. He's, driving a long way to see you. He's taking care of you. He's doing your dishes, which, I mean, thank you. That's amazing. And then maybe even things like lavish trips, or really thinking out how to give you a good like date, and planning the date, and showing up, and being such a gentleman or gentlewoman, etc. But you know what I mean. Um,
Mm.
and you're like, great, oh my God, checking all the boxes. I'm ready to have this person meet my family. They seem like they have a great head on their shoulders. Maybe they have a good job. I think a lot of them, I mean, some of them don't, but I feel like narcissistic people sometimes will, because of maybe a lack of empathy, can be a little bit cutthroat in a corporate environment. So sometimes they are successful. So you have the successful person that's showing up, that seems kind and seems caring and checking all the boxes and wants a family, and you're like, oh, this is the person.
This is
So
my person. I
this
hear
is
that
my
language a lot.
person.
This is my person.
Exactly. And
Mm.
so but they're so nice. They're so perfect.
They hook you. And I think, again, people think that, you picked them. And that phrase always sticks with me. And you've
Oh, I
made
hate that.
content on this. I know I certainly have this idea that like we picked the wrong person. Agreed.
Mhm.
We picked the wrong person. However, I think it's more accurate to say that they picked us. And also, it really just casts aside the fact that we were also deceived. If you knew he
Yeah.
was lying, if you knew that this nice guy thing that he was putting on was in fact an act, I think we would all have walked away. They don't sit down on a first date and start calling you names and really showing who they are. They mirror you, they mask, they put this, soulmate connection kind of vibe in that idealization early on. Then there's a switch. And really getting specific about the covert ones, I see a lot of these little tactics. So you're talking about kind of, the emotional neglect, minimizing, ambient abuse, dog whistling, triangulation. These ones are so covert. And I think, looking at even something like triangulation, in my personal experience with triangulation, it was always kind of like, yeah, so and so said that you weren't that likable. Or, even my mom said that. And I know specifically with mine, I remember that before I'd even met his parents, there was this whole big complicated thing about meeting his parents. And I gave them a Christmas card. He asked me to write them a Christmas card and like from us. And I remember that I wrote their first names on the card. And he said to me, yeah, I gave it to my parents, but my mom threw it in the garbage. And I said, what? She threw it in the garbage. And he said, yeah, because the envelope had their first names on it. So she thinks you're rude. But don't worry, it's fine. My parents are just weird like that. But do you see how before I even
Yeah.
met them, he told me that? He put it in my mind that they don't like me. Additionally, he knew that I
Mhm.
wrote their first names. He knew that they would think that that was a problem or that was rude. Meanwhile, he told me what to write. Like he set me up and then put this sort of they don't like you feeling. And he did the same thing to his parents, made it seem like
Yeah.
there was something that I didn't like about them. And it created a problem right off the bat. What kind of covert tactics do you see that work really well? Like, even including the ones I've named, what do you think are some of the top ones that just are really effective?
Yeah, when you were speaking about triangulation, it made me think of another way they'll triangulate, and that's with their previous exes. And not so much in a she's crazy, because I think if you have maybe with mine specifically, he was a covert narcissist that was really into self-help, which is great. But and therapy. He was also in therapy. And so they, I think, know not to call their ex crazy. They've heard that's bad. So instead, what he would do is, my ex did this and it really hurt my feelings. And so I was like, oh no, or my ex was always on her phone, or my ex always did this. And so what that does is it conditions you, and it's triangulating with an ex that maybe she did do those things, maybe she didn't. But essentially, it's conditioning you to be like, well, I would never do that. I would never do that to you. I would never raise my voice at you. Or she was so emotional. I'm not emotional. I could keep my emotions in check. So that when they do push your buttons and get you to reactive abuse, or to react to their abuse rather, um, like, oh, you're just like my ex. You're just emotional. And so it's a triangulation tactic to, I guess, more or less condition you. The whole thing with covert abusers is also like, how do I make you mold into this box? Like, how do I
How do
control
I
you? How do
fit
I
you?
condition you?
Exactly.
Exactly. And that's just another tactic they'll do it.
Yeah. I find, the crazy ex thing, I agree with you that some are it's still covert, right? But I think feel like some of
Hmm.
them are slightly more overt and they're like, my ex is crazy. To be fair, we have crazy exes, so I know that
Yeah.
feeling, but the difference is that I wouldn't say that on my first few dates with someone. And I think that's the red flag that we talk about, is how quickly they are going to disparage someone else and not take any responsibility for anything that's happened in a past relationship. But I think that you also see that with, like, they have a crazy ex, terrible boss, their mom was mean to
Hmm.
them, their best friend betrayed them. Like, you can see all the
Oh yeah.
people around them that have perhaps picked up on their toxicity, but they'll blame everyone else for that. It works really well when it comes to the new supply. They'll tell them that you're crazy, or they'll sort of, even in my own ex's relationship, he's conditioned her to believe, yes, that I'm crazy, but he's given examples, and he has, described me in a way and tells her, don't be like my ex,
Yeah.
and that's conditioning her. Meanwhile,
Hmm.
I'm not what he actually describes. So she's trying to avoid that. She's being conditioned the same way that I was, the same way that all of us get groomed and conditioned in these relationships. But it's because we cared so much, because they presented that amazing, wonderful person in the beginning, that makes us really let our guard down and makes us trust this person. And I think that's a key piece of what makes it so hard to get out. Um, I know for me, in hindsight, I experienced a lot of ambient abuse. I'd only actually heard that term maybe 2 or 3 years ago. The best example I ever saw was on that TV show called Couples Therapy. And I just saw this clip on TikTok, and it was a couple who was in a therapist's office, and the therapist asked her a question, and he kind of stood up in the middle of
Oh,
therapy
I saw
and
that.
started touching things on the bookshelf. And the
Mhm.
person who posted the video was talking about that being a perfect example of ambient abuse. What message do you think that delivers? In a couples therapy setting, he stands up while she's talking and touches things on the bookshelf. What do you think that displays?
Oh, absolutely. It's first of all, it's to display that he's uninterested in what she has to say and she's being minimized. So he's so uninterested that he stood up. She doesn't matter. Her opinions don't matter. What she has to say does not matter. But also I think even the act of standing up, being that he's probably bigger than her, was a little bit intimidating. Um, so a little bit of those two things. That's just right off the bat what I see.
Yeah, there's this very kind of like dismissiveness, or what you say isn't important enough for me to be engaged in this. And my ex would do things like that and be really unengaged, but he would always say, well, oh, I have ADHD, or,
Oh, fine.
I'm busy, or I can multitask. I
Hmm.
remember having a full-on argument with him in therapy where he wanted to be doing something else, and in fact be talking while the therapist was talking, so two people talking at the exact same time. And then he was like, I'll repeat back to you what she said to prove that I can talk and listen at the same time. And I remember the therapist was like, we're not going to do that. I just remember she was stunned by it. But he went through such lengths to like prove that he didn't need to appear like he was listening, putting aside the fact that even if that was true, which it absolutely isn't, this game of proving it was ridiculous, and that what
Mm.
any person needs is to feel like they're in an engaged conversation, especially when you're trying to build your relationship to be stronger or better or overcome some kind of hurt. It's like the least you could do is listen, but he wanted to prove that he didn't need to. He wanted to show me that it didn't matter, minimizing my feelings, gaslighting me into thinking what I wanted, what I needed, was just ridiculous. And I see that in the same way that that man stood up. It's like, what you're saying does not require me to actually sit here. It's not important enough. And then on top of that, you're crazy, ridiculous, and sensitive to even think that this matters. And I think, kind of going back to your point about emotional neglect being a really key piece of emotional abuse, it's what they're not doing. So, how am I abusive? Can't you just hear an abuser? How am I
Yeah.
abusive? Because I didn't pay attention to every word you said. How am
Hmm.
I abusive? Because I told you that you need to clean the dishes better, or because, I don't ask about your day. Now, not asking about your day is abuse. And it's like, again, that isolated incident, it isn't. And I think that the key in this is the patterns. How
Yeah.
long does this go on? In what ways does this go on? Find the patterns. And I know that you work with people. What do you tell clients? How do you respond to comments asking these questions? What do you advise people to do?
Yeah. Well, first, a lot of it is like, validation. They come in, they're like, is this abuse? Am I the insane person? Am I the problem? And they'll go through some things and there's nuance, right? There's people that uh like for example, like the neglect situation, it could just be, have you communicated with your partner? Are you having like, are they both having um a stressful situation? There's communication needs to be involved. But what I find like a huge distinction that this is obvious intentional passive aggressive abuse is they showed up one way, there was a life event, and then they retract uh time, they retract interest. Anytime that you are interested in something, they'll minimize it. Um, you'll find like those patterns of, oh my gosh, I just got a new job. Oh, cool. And then they'll just like walk out the door. Um, ways to just chip away at your self-esteem and really illustrate that they don't care about you. Um, and they're just like, I'm just so frustrated. It just seems like he doesn't care, she doesn't care. Um, but also those like little pieces of ambient abuse, like I can't do anything right. I feel like I can't do anything right. They're controlling me, but not really. Like they're not telling me that I can't wear this dress or I can't wear these pants, but they're implying it. They're saying things
Yeah,
like,
you know that you shouldn't. You can wear
yeah,
them. It's just that I don't like them. If you
I
want to
don't
go out
prefer
and you
them.
just you don't want to look good, fine, that's fine. I don't know who you're
Exactly.
dressing for. Clearly, it's not me.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's that covert control, that covert abuse that I think it's so difficult to pinpoint, because when we think of abuse, I mean, before I was educated, I thought, okay, big, angry, yelling person. I mean, that's what I experienced in my home life. Big, angry, yelling guy. Perfect. Can spot those. Know to stay away from that person. Perfect. But when it came to covert abuse, I had no idea I was being abused because of those covert tactics. It weren't necessarily overtly saying, I don't like your hair like that. I don't like your makeup like that. But it was more like, I don't like women that wear makeup. Although I dated you in the beginning, and I appreciated the way you looked and I loved the way you looked and I said you were a goddess, etc. But now all of a sudden, I just really don't like women that wear makeup. I don't like women that have their hair like that. I don't like women that do their nails. Um, and it's
And
those
it's tear you
little,
down.
oh, that, yeah, absolutely tearing you down. And then, I molded myself, I changed. And I didn't do my makeup. I took out my hair extensions. I stopped going to the nail salon. Um, and noticing like, this isn't me. I don't feel proud in the way I look. I don't, look at myself in the mirror. I'm like, who is this? But it's a way for them to, I guess, yeah, tear you down, make you less confident.
Yeah. I think, they really try so hard to just destroy your sense of self. They remove
Hmm.
your personhood from you. And it happens slowly over time. And it's through all of these covert ways that we're talking about that one day you wake up and you're like, I don't even recognize myself anymore. And if you were to even connect the dots to abuse, it's like, he's not even yelling at me. Now, some people say covert narcissists don't yell at you. They absolutely do behind
Hmm.
closed doors. Not all, though. That's the thing that I think, again, a lot of people miss is that narcissists, people say like women are not a monolith, men are not, narcissists are not a
Not a
monolith. They
monolith.
are different. In the types that they are, but they're also individual humans. Some yell, some don't. Mine was a covert narcissist who was physically abusive and would yell. And that's not always the case. I have so many clients who are like, I can't even, I don't know, is this even abuse? And they'll say things and it's like, again, individually isolated, no, but when you put all of it together, so that
Hmm.
pattern that we're talking about, this consistent pattern of abuse is how you can start to break free and recognize I'm always feeling like it's me and I'm the problem. Why would you want to be in a relationship with someone who's always telling you you're the problem? However, if you're buying into that, and it's so much easier than people think to buy into that, then you don't have the self-esteem to leave because you think if I'm the problem, and you're sort of feeding into that, I'm so lucky that this person wants me when I'm such a problem. So
Yes.
and you're constantly trying to please them, but that's the conditioning, is how to get their adoration and validation and attention back that you were getting at the beginning. So you're constantly chasing this, even though you don't fold the towels right and you can't clean the dishes and you don't understand. You're not very
Mm.
smart. People don't like you. And that's okay. It's so subtle, but it's destructive, so completely destructive. So rebuilding from it, it's one of the hardest things. What do you tell people? Like where should people start to try to get free of this?
Yeah, I think the first thing is really like living in your truth. Um, I think we say this a lot, but like writing everything down really helps bring in some clarity. What are the incidences? So you can start putting incidents to get together where this was a pattern of disrespect. Um, that yeah, you're valid to feel frustrated in this situation. Like that was abusive. Like someone should not be controlling the way you live your life, your finances. I mean, even just like, oh, I'm just better with money, and then you lose access to that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and it does ambient abuse in general, this covert abuse makes it's almost like they're taking care of you like a parent. You just don't know better, so let me take care of you. And
Mhm.
at first you're like, oh, that's great. Like maybe, have someone to take care of me, but that it's the control aspect, right? That, and minimizing what you're able to do. And you start feeling you can't live without this person, without their guidance. And so yeah, so you start, I think the first list is like first thing is making that list, but also then making a list of things that, are false. Like I know I can do this because historically I have done this before I was in this relationship. And most of the time, like you were fine before this person. You could handle yourself, you're an adult, you are okay before this person. And so um kind of like deprogramming yourself from their influence is like the first way to really just kind of break out of that fog. Like what they said was not true. Here's why. Here's the evidence as to why it's not true, and staying in that truth, because then you start asking those questions. Okay, then why would someone say that about me? And then it starts bringing more questions.
Yeah.
Like, why would they say that? What was the goal? What was the intent?
Yeah. It's about, I mean, educating yourself, using that education and applying it to what you're experiencing and just challenge things, right? The abuser is putting you down. They're telling you that it's to make you better. I
Hmm.
just, listen, I just want clean dishes. It's important to me. I know you value that too. Here's how you can do better. They're telling you it's for you. What else could it be? That's
Hmm.
what I sort of ask people. Just consider, are there other things that it might be? What if it is to destroy you? What if it is to just break you down and make you question your own ability? And you're talking about how they sort of put themselves in this position like, I'm just taking care of you, right? You're not good with finances. I'm just better at it than you are. That happened to me. So it
Hmm.
sort of it goes like this. It puts them up here.
Yeah.
I find it really ironic even that they position themselves as taking care of you, and you are literally their mother taking care of them. Guys, tell me they're not all king babies, right? They're all
Absolutely.
like,
I had a yes.
you do all the work. You do all the work, and yet I'm taking care of you while you do everything for me. Make it
It's
make
that
sense.
double standard. Absolutely.
Mm.
Meanwhile, I'm the one cooking dinner. I'm the one, that's why the dishes are dirty. So, I'm the one cooking dinner. I even made like a spreadsheet of his things that he needed to do. Yeah. Of just like, yeah, so absolutely king baby.
Yeah, you made him lists. I
Yeah, I
made
made him
mine
list.
lists.
Oh,
And the
great.
list never got done. I just, and then you become the nag and you're like, list, and now I'm a nag for giving you the list. You can't win. But I think the way to win, the way that I tell people to win, is to leave. And I don't say just leave, right? I hate that. It's not easy to leave. Learn how to leave, but education is the key. So you are a domestic violence educator. And I love that. I think that TikTok really blew up, especially over the last few years. YouTube, Instagram, it's blown up with people educating on this topic. I, for one, am absolutely happy to have as many people in the space talking about it because we're all coming at it from different angles and educating people to really see emotional abuse because it's kind of invisible. You
Hmm.
you mentioned yourself, like I thought it was a big scary guy and like screaming at you or hitting you or and that's not always what it is. So your
Oh yeah.
account really highlights that. And I know that your book really highlights that too. So I really urge people to grab a copy of But They're So Nice and to read that and learn about the abuse tactics as one of the first steps in getting educated and getting out. Is there anything you would kind of want to leave us with? Any abuse tactics that you want to talk about, or just any advice to people that are watching?
I think something that helped me realize that this was an abusive relationship. I think when you start to feel like your partner is more like a dictator, a parent, there you start feeling small around them. Ask yourself the questions why, because that's I think a normal healthy relationship is more egalitarian, and if you're feeling that, you're witnessing a power imbalance, which is the cornerstone of an abusive relationship.
Mm, such a good piece of advice. Thank you so much for being here today. And I really want everyone to go check out your channel, No Narc Sense, across all the platforms. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Lisa.
Covert abuse can be so insidious and hard to recognize. So I'm really glad to have people talking about this and really educating us all on some of the most covert abuse tactics like ambient abuse and really even emotional neglect. So if you're healing from something like this, if you're trying to exit or trying to move on from an abusive relationship with someone who is a narcissist, narcissistic, or abusive, I want you to check out the Trauma Bond Recovery course. This is a 12 module program that is going to change the game for you. It's going to give you all of the education that we were just talking about in this interview, as well as how you can focus on yourself, how you can really flip everything and learn the emotional skills that you need to cope with leaving a relationship like this, to manage the anxiety, to manage post separation abuse, to manage how to get yourself out, and how to learn what got you there in the first place. I want you to approach this from a place of curiosity, not judgment. In the final part of the trauma bond recovery course, you're going to learn how to love yourself and build an incredible support system and really build financial independence and build a future for yourself without your abuser. So please use the link below and check out the trauma bond recovery course. Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss any more videos as part of the Narcissism Unmasked series.
Stronger than